All right, okay. We are live. We have the internet working. We have bills on the screen. We are jumping into our delightful afternoon with you, Michael. Thank you.
Do that again.
Please begin, 481.
Good afternoon. This is Mike O'Grady with Office of Legislative Counsel. In front of you, you have H 481, an act relating to stormwater management. It has one significant revenue impact. Would you like me to just focus on that revenue impact?
I'd love if you could give each section a sentence so we understand what's in the bill.
Section 1 is amending the stormwater permitting statute 10 VSA 1264 to address when municipalities can assume or assess impact fees when they assume authority over a residential subdivision. And then on page 3, you may have heard of the 3-acre stormwater permit and when it needs to be complied with. This is pushing out the deadline date in Lake Champlain and Lake Memphremagog from October of 2023 to October of 2028. And in those watersheds that are not in Champlain or Memphremagog, it's pushed out to 2038 or not later than 5 years after a binding stormwater specific waste load allocation has been established for that watershed, whichever occurs first. So there's more time for people subject to a 3-acre to work with the agency, work with funding sources, find ways to get compliance with the permit. Moving on from there, you come to the significant revenue impact of section 2. It's the repeal of the sunset on the Clean Water Act property transfer tax surcharge. As you may all remember or may not, the clean water surcharge was established in 2014 or 2015 to provide a revenue source for the Clean Water Fund. It was at that time 0.2% of that property that was subject to the property transfer tax, which is $200,000 or more, or $250,000 or more, depending on how you finance your property. In 2017 or 2018, you amended that authority in order to provide that some of it would be used as debt service for the housing bond at ACCD. And you at that same time scheduled that the clean water part of the surcharge would repeal with sunset in stages. First in 2027, it would be reduced to an amount that would help pay the debt service for the bond. And then in 2039, it would repeal entirely. And there's more moving parts than that. But what you are doing or proposing in H 481 is to repeal that sunset of the clean water surcharge entirely. And that's what section 2 does. And then section 3, 4, and 5 makes corresponding changes to the purpose sections that were in that housing bill, which was part of the housing bill. This was actually in the appropriations bill, which laid out the purpose and intent of how the clean water surcharge would be used. You'll see in section 3, there was its purpose that it would not later than July 1, 2027 be reduced to 0.04. That was the debt service for the housing bond. You're striking that. You're repealing the repeal of the sunset entirely. Same thing, same change. Section 4, eliminating that reference to that in 2027, the surcharge is going to be allocated for the bond for the Vermont Housing and Conservation Trust Fund. Section 5, you are making several changes related to when things are happening for the surcharge. You eliminate the July 2027 sunset. The surcharge actually was increased from 0.2 to 0.22. I believe Kirby did that last year. And then in subdivisions 3 and 4 on page 6, line 12 and 12 through 17, you can strike that because without the sunset, you don't need these references to what happens when there is a sunset on July of 2027. So that's the key revenue portion. Instead of sunsetting the clean water surcharge, it is going to remain in effect. It will not have a sunset. There are still provisions in that appropriations bill from 2018, providing that a certain amount of it will go to service the debt relief on the housing bond. So that will continue as well. The committee did have a discussion really right at the end of their debate on this bill about whether to sunset this surcharge at some point. And they said that will be a discussion for you all to have.
Thank you. Yes, we are. Is that the whole, so questions on this section, and then is there more in the bill after that?
Oh yeah, there's more in the bill.
Great, okay.
So section 6 amends to.
Well, wait, I think Representative Feltus, do you have a question on this section?
At what rate is it going to stay in effect?
Right,
Forever,
it
right
would
now.
continue at its current rate of 0.22.
0.22.
Section 6 amends.
Wait, we have more.
Oh, wait, I thought we were just on this section. I can wait to the end.
Okay,
The money that's gonna be transferred for the bonding, bond, is that for the VHCB?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes. Section 6 amends 2 existing. There are currently grant programs that are available to persons that are subject to clean water permitting requirements or other regulatory requirements. One is called the Drought Lands Implementation Program. It's no longer going to be a grant program. It's going to be a financial assistance program that would give A&R authority discretion to come up with creative financing mechanisms. And it is going to be available. It's already available to 3 acre, but it's also going to be available to when there's a permit in a stormwater impaired water that might need a permit and did not have the stormwater management manual or permitting standard that they need.
So what structure other than a grant are we talking about?
Loans.
So afraid of, yeah.
Moving down page 7, line 14. This is a municipal stormwater implementation program. This is a program available to municipalities for their requirements to seek your municipal roads, general permit, MS4 general permit. It's now going to be available for them if they comply with permit standards for impervious surface of 3 acres or more for residential subdivision when the municipality assumes full legal responsibility for the stormwater system. So these, you might have 3 acre properties in your district. They might be struggling with financing it. They might not have HOAs or other ways to organize. The municipality may not be helping them at all. This gives an incentive for municipalities to assume some of that responsibility and then qualify for financing to help the subdivisions reach permitting standards.
Really helps housing.
Moving on, section 7.
Now I can wait.
okay,
Sorry.
no, you're good.
You're in the priority section of the Clean Water Fund. As you might recall, you created the fund, you created a board to make recommendations to the governor and to you about how to spend that fund, appropriate that money every year. You have 3 tiers of priority underneath the Clean Water Fund. First tier is to make recommendations regarding grants and programs which give equal priority. You're going to add to that second tier, which is generally for what I would call non-regulatory programs, funding for the municipal stormwater implementation program, including at least $1 million annually for costs of complying with permitting requirements under subdivision 1264 C7, which is the 3-acre permit. So basically, at least $1 million should be recommended every year for that program to help municipalities, help residential subdivisions comply with 3-acre.
School districts are technically municipalities and they're often over 3 acres or subject to this. Who is bearing the cost of that? And are they counting as municipalities for the purpose of applying for that?
The A&R has a program that's been working with schools to make money available to schools. In some instances, I think they fully funded the school. So that program continues, and so it is there for them. You are correct that under the default definition, municipality, a school district is a municipality. I don't know how or if the agency has been dealing with school districts as municipalities or separately in that program. But they are definitely getting assistance. And that's really it in the Clean Water Fund. Then there is Section 8 in appropriation. In fiscal year 2027, $5 million from the Clean Water Fund for the municipal stormwater implementation program for costs of complying with the 3-acre permit, including for residential subdivisions when a municipality assumes full legal responsibility. Page 11, section 9. This is the other thing that's quasi-revenue related, not really state revenue. This is more municipal revenue. Last year, General Assembly amended how municipalities can assess property for purposes of developing stormwater rates or groundwater rates. And you said on page 12, line 20, that they had to do that based on an average area of impervious surface on residential property within the municipality. Turns out that almost all the utilities set it on a median basis. And they were a little upset that they would have to redo their entire equivalent residential unit calculation. So they asked that it be on an average or median of the area of impervious surface. And that was done, and they all applauded. Page 12, line 4, section 10, this is a study committee on. Pardon? Utilities.
All the utilities applauded.
Yeah,
I would love to see that.
because otherwise they would have had to go through adopting an ordinance, getting municipal authority, redoing their ERU calculation, and they didn't want to do that. Page 12, line 4, section 10, this is a study committee on creation of regional stormwater utility districts. It's to look at a more regional, more, broader way to implement water quality requirements in the state. To look at how other states have done it, how they might increase cost efficiencies, et cetera, and how to assess property if there were utilities. It's going to have a pretty vigorous membership. Commissioner of DEC, a representative of the league, a representative of a municipality with an MS4 permit, a representative municipality with a population under 2,500, a representative of the Green Mountain Water Environment Association. Those are the people that run utilities and run wastewater treatment and drinking water treatment. Commercial or industrial business subject to a 3-acre stormwater permit, a representative of an environmental advocacy organization. And they are going to review current statutory authority for development of regional stormwater utility districts, which you can already do if you wanted to, but you would have to do it on a municipality by municipality, vote by vote, the way they say solid waste entities are created. SWMEs, because I know the chair loves that term. And then propose an approach the state could use for implementing regional stormwater utilities that would allow the utilities to assume liability and responsibility for compliance with water quality law, how they get the 3-acre permit, how they achieve the phosphorus reduction targets in a utility, how they do these things with a cost-effective and equitable approach so that your one subdivision is free of permitting requirements, but the very next subdivision, which the first subdivision drains into, has to meet the 3-acre permit. And so there are equitable and cost issues such as that. And basically, it's like how these utilities would work, how they would qualify for funding, how they would achieve the requirements, targets, et cetera.
Just to confirm, how are these regions set up? Are these the same regions? above?
So it's not proposed yet. So that's
Okay.
kind of what this utility committee will look at, is like, could you do it based on your economic development commission? Could you do it on planning commission? Would you do it in a way so like the solid waste management entities do, where they choose who's going to be within their district? And some districts are single municipality districts.
You're giving us some
Yeah.
flashes to other.
Yeah. I mean, so I guess that's the question is, we have now multiple efforts that are moving towards regional governance. Is there any coordination across them?
There was a regional governance working group that Representative Higley served on, yes?
I haven't met.
We have not met. Do you have any interest in doing a little bit of rabble rousing to get that group back together? Representative Higley?
Can try.
Thank you. That would be so lovely. On behalf of all of us, that would be lovely.
Moving in the
Yeah.
same direction.
So much so. Thank you, Mark. Because it was never sunset. It just stopped meeting and hasn't started again.
Two members were
Yeah.
no longer,
So they need to be reappointed. We need new appointments and all those things. Okay, Thank you.
it's a 6-member committee, and we lost 2.
Thank you.
So you are effectively at the end of the bill.
Representative Maslin, what would you like to say?
A couple of things. One is, it may sound counterintuitive, but I've been looking forward to this bill for a number of years because the 3-acre question came up since we first did this big statute that division between 3-acre more or less, and so I've been aware of these issues were out there since working with David Kane a while ago. And so here we are, and good, thank you. Regional government, I have a bill that hasn't gone anywhere yet. I'm happy to talk about it with you, and Representative Holcomb is right, that there are a lot of issues, there are a lot of little posses out there that have been trying to corral regional government for a while. And no time like the president, at least, to make some forward motion here.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
Michael, do you have, yes, Representative Feltes,
This is on the bill in general.
That's delightful. Thank you.
Is that-
please.
Was there any discussion in the committee about the effectiveness of this 3-acre rule, that the reduction that has been achieved at the few options that have been able to achieve that? Has there been an evaluation of, indeed, is this a good idea to continue with the 3-acre rule?
There was definitely discussion. Representative North was kind of focused on whether or not the benefit, the phosphorus reduction was really worth it in regard to the cost per acre for retrofitting, redeveloping, however you want to describe it. But you have to remember that this load reduction from 3-acre is part of the formula that EPA approved in the TMDL.
Right.
So if you say stop doing it, then you have to find that load somewhere else. And EPA has to approve of where you find that load somewhere else. And EPA doesn't really care about costs. They say you need to have funding, you need to have adequate sources of funding, and the state does, and the state made significant and sincere efforts to provide that funding, but EPA doesn't, at least the previous EPAs, I don't know about the current EPA, doesn't necessarily take costs into account. And if you take that away, take that load reduction away, and you don't do anything to fill it, then you're opening this the EPA up, because it's EPA's TMDL now, it's not the state's TMDL, because they disapproved the previous one. By law, the second one becomes EPA's. And so if you take away that load reduction, then EPA will have to find it somewhere else, and they can use their authority to do it. And one of their authorities is what's called residual designation authority, which allows them to require a permit and compliance with permitting standards if they determine that your parcel is a significant contributor to an impaired water. They literally have a list of 600 properties of 3 acres that have been determined in some way to contribute to an impaired water. They honestly could just be like, yeah, you repealed 3 acre, we're just telling you to do 3 acre.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. O'Grady? We're also going to hear from Neil Cameron from the Department of Environmental Conservation and James Duffy from the Joint Fiscal Office before Michael comes back again for another bill. So we're gonna have like sort of the same, we're gonna have a little bit of a circle conversation here. Did you have another question for Michael?
Just a point that,
I think no, the answer is no, Michael.
because Michael O'Grady implied, but didn't necessarily state, you pick 3 acres would help the EPA as a rate in which to make it out TMDL. Could have picked 2.5 acres or 4 acres or whatever. But the point is, total maximum daily load is the object of the exercise, and how we get there may be in material, so long as we get there, we can, do the number that we have to do to get there. So there was great concern about 3 acres. Oh my God, oh my God. But I think it's implied, we're gonna clean up the waters, all the stuff that's on into the streams and rivers and goes into the lake. I'm of the opinion we should just get on with it, do whatever practical means, you can do that. Practical means we can do that. Anyway, okay, thanks.
Thank you, Representative Medlin. Mr. Cameron, do you want to join us?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Ways and Means.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be here again. It's been a number of years, and I do remember speaking about 3 acre stormwater with you, sir, a number of years ago. So that's great. Thank you. You too. I think
And so-
you called me off to the chamber so we could have a little sidebar and figure something out for the committee, which we did.
So I invited you here today, actually not to talk very much about the 3 acre though, I might segue there if we do. But because we have historically had this sunset on the clean water funding in order to have a check-in on how we're spending the money. And so that's what I already told you this, I'm telling everyone else this, so that's why I invited you. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. For the record, my name is Neil Cameron. I'm the Deputy Commissioner, Department of Environmental Conservation. Also, we'll let you know that I kind of wrote down a few of the questions that I heard and can provide some additional color commentary as needed about, financing and what that means, or how we're doing with the schools and so forth. So property transfer tax surcharge, 0.22%, is harvested, collected, provided into the Clean Water Fund. Sorry, I'm not sure the lingo that you all use in your committee here. It's a very important component of the fund. I want to just have a quick peek. There it is. I know I had it. It's right here. At the Clean Water Fund's operating statement provided to us by Tax Department in February for the last Clean Water Board meeting. And so the current fiscal year where we are in, SFY 25, revenue projections on the PTT, we call it, are $8,510,000. So that is a significant component of the Clean Water Fund. The state, through its agencies, including Agency of Agriculture and Agency of Natural Resources, deploy those dollars based on the recommendations of the Clean Water Board to achieve the goals of the Lake Champlain TMDL and to support water quality enhancement and protection in surface waters all around the state of Vermont. It's really important dollars. If the committee were ever interested, I can bring experts in to tell you kind of how what the board recommends translating into the revenues that you raise going into the big bill translates into what's happening with people out there on the landscape that are building really cool projects that reduce water pollution into Lake Champlain. It's working, it's happening. We produce a a clean water performance report on an annual basis, and it documents the dollars that go from the Clean Water Fund and the capital bill and all federal sources, and how these dollars are deployed across the land use sectors and the nutrient reductions that we achieve. And we have made real progress. So the PTT, were it to sunset in 2027, would cut a quarter to a third of, actually a little bit more than a third, of the total revenue to the Clean Water Fund out. We have a lot of boats that are floating on a tide that is lifted, and those, I kind of liken it to a high tide lifting all boats, right? So those are our small organizations out there doing the water quality work. Think Southeast Vermont Watershed Association, think the Ottaquechee Conservation District, the Friends of the Missisquoi River. Like, these are small organizations with 2, 3, 4 employees. Conservation districts, you may have heard of them. They do this work out there in the field, and they're supported by these revenues. So there's this little economic sector that exists in Vermont that has grown up to implement the Lake Champlain TMDL supported by these dollars. I will stop right there and ask, what else you want me to talk about the PTT?
I think that's it. We just wanted to know that it was working.
Yeah.
And I know that the House Environment Committee took a lot of testimony to check in that it was working, but just wanted to do our due diligence with you as well. Anyone have any questions?
I don't know if I emailed back and forth with you. I think it was someone at the EC a couple of years ago when the your outfit and Secretary Moore began to move away from direct funding. I may use wrong words, to local initiatives, local folks like the network.
Yeah, okay.
And how that would work.
Okay,
And I was skeptical. That's my job.
okay.
But I can see that the network that are implementing this stuff piecemeal is the wrong term, but in small bites are being effective, and I'm appreciative of that.
Well, thank you. Let me just offer for the committee that you're referencing the clean water service providers, and I was remiss in not mentioning them in the
Yeah, right.
post.
Thank you, sir.
So these are organizations that have been stood up for us by regional planning commissions or VHCD that receive formula funding from the Clean Water Fund every year to find and build these projects and fund these smaller organizations that are doing them. So
And if I'm correct, they didn't exist a couple of years ago.
that is correct. It was
Thank
my one of my career projects was helping to develop
Thank you
that.
very much.
Representative Brennan.
So this bill extends the tax until 2030?
Forever.
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 Yeah. Sounds
Right.
very cool.
If you so choose,
Is there
we
any,
do not disagree. I can say that, my boss.
Thank you.
I'll give a statement of support if you need me to. So.
have we heard from people who benefit from this? Who get that, do they get 8 million? No, it's a portion of that.
So the $8 million from the property transfer tax goes into the Clean Water Fund. The Clean Water, yes, just from the property transfer tax. There's also funds coming in from S sheets and a small proportion of rooms and meals. I think it's 6%. The sum total of that is the Clean Water Fund, so state dollars. And the clean water budget is complemented by about a $10 million per year capital investment. That's more for agricultural programs and water infrastructure, wastewater plants, stormwater systems.
I do have a question. So the resolution process for a project that's the public is really involved in. I'll give you the example of Grand Isle. It appears there was a 1 mile stretch of paved road that residents use, emergency vehicles use to lake or all kinds of reasons. Now they want to tear it up in a 9-foot bike path. How do those resolutions, where's the compromise here? How does that work?
Oh, that's a very good question, sir. I'm plugged into, I know a little bit about that. That is at State Park at North Hero State Park. And the issue there is North Hero State Park is a 3-acre site, so it is required to address its stormwater runoff. One way that you can comply with the 3-acre rule is to get below 3 acres. And that is actually, it sounds cute, but it's real. It is, if you reduce your amount of impervious, you are reducing your amount of stormwater runoff. So the most cost-effective engineering solution up at North Hero was to reduce the size of that old campground road, right? Because that's a closed facility now, but it's still state land, so people use it. Instead turn it into a way that is still wide enough for vehicular access under an emergency situation, but also reduces the amount of impervious surface to below 3 acres. That may be your district, I'm not sure. So you may have a lot more knowledge than I do of the project.
It's not, but yeah, thanks.
Yeah, but it's in a general sense. That's what's going on with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Do you want to answer the outstanding questions, or do folks want to ask their outstanding questions, or do folks feel satisfied about whatever outstanding question?
May I address a couple of them,
Yeah.
just in order that I heard them? So Representative Kimball, nice to see you. What does financial assistance mean if not grants? Ledge Council Grady answered loans, and that's accurate. But there are a lot of mechanisms within the loan space that we can exercise to make a loan not be a 100% loan at 5 or 8% interest. So when we are using state dollars to create a loan program, we can implement that loan program at no interest if we so choose. We do not necessarily need to create interest on the value of the revolve, right? We can also establish mechanisms for subsidy. So for many years, helped to run the state revolving loan funds, and a kind of mainstay of that is subsidy. So you borrow $10 million from the state, but you only have to pay back $7 million. That would be a 30% subsidized loan, and we do a lot of that. So there is more to a financial assistance program than a simple loan. And depending, in the types of things that our programs would look at in developing this out would be need, the ability of that neighborhood vis-a-vis the big box store to pay, right? Things like that. And of course, the municipality, this is the elegance of this, which is under the hood of this bill, and I've testified in Chair Sheldon's committee. We can invest dollars from multiple sources into this municipal stormwater grant program. We can create revolving loan space. We can create a grant space for certain types of recipients that really need that help. Municipalities, as borrowers to the state revolving loan funds, have access to subsidy. We can create subsidy mechanisms that recognize other demands on subsidy, like big, huge wastewater treatment facility upgrade needed in Barry, for example. But, identify a body of subsidy within the SRF any given year of award that comes from EPA and put that to work for 3 acre when those municipalities are adopting. So the thing about this bill that I think is super important is it takes a baby step towards incenting municipalities to take on these sites. It's not all the way there. That's what the study committee's about. But it's a good first step. It alleviates the burden a municipality would have to create the ability to levy fees on those affected neighbors in order to then come to us and borrow money super cheap with subsidy over time, so that the owner inside of that HOA would be subject to their small proportion on a monthly basis as part of their tax bill, and not a neighborhood association looking at a $2 million thing right here, right now. So financing.
That helps.
Yeah. I'm so proud of the team working on green schools, Representative Holcomb. So we are providing the department using a lot of largely federal money, also some American Rescue Plan Act, also federal money, but different. We have all of the schools funded for full design. We believe we are super close to having all of the schools funded for construction. We've been working very tightly with the federal Partnership of the Lake Champlain Basin program on this. Secretary Moore has been extremely effective at working with them to get dollars. So your school municipalities are working through this process with a really cool contractual setup that has been created by our teams. So
Good, thank you for that.
yeah.
Fairgrounds.
There we go. So I am being constant. Yes, so, yeah, no, thank you for asking that question. That's very good. Obviously, a great topic of conversation last year and this. As a result of dialogue last year, the agency worked with a couple members of the General Assembly to understand the need. We went back, we looked at the American Rescue Plan Act funds that we had that the General Assembly had provided us in the area of 3 acre. We were able to carve off $2 million that could be used by the fairgrounds for design and implementation. And what we did in order to hit the timelines, because the timelines are an issue with ARPA. So we created an MOU with our partners at Agency of Agriculture in the Ag Development Program, so that we obligated the dollars to Agency of Ag. So they're obligated, we hit that timeline, and then the Agency of Ag is working with the fairs. Now there are fairs that, that's $2 million is $2 million. It's not as much as is needed. And there are 4 fairs, not more than that. So Rutland, Addison Field Days, Barton, Orleans County, Barton, and Champlain Valley, right? And so the Agency of Ag is working on that grant program. I personally met very productively with the folks from the Vermont State Fair and very good dialogue with them, have offered and will actually be taking the step of kind of convening all of the important agents at the table on that one, because that one's thorny. It's difficult. It's not simply a function of money there. There's a lot of infrastructure conflict. And there's a lot of opportunity to partner with the town. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. So $4 million project.
well, they say 3.7, but that's early engineering.
Yeah.
And part of the thing.
Sorry.
No, I'm not.
We're getting
Sorry, yeah,
too in the
before
weeds
I-
here for Wednesday. Okay. Any other outstanding questions? Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you. I will hang out to hear about the fiscal note and meet these
Thank
folks.
James, thank you for joining us all afternoon.
Record, James Duffy, Joint Fiscal Office. Chair Poenheiser, would you like the
I'd
fiscal
love-
note shared on the screen? Great.
Thank you. That would be so nice.
Oh, just have James stay on so I can get back.
Okay.
Yeah. Great. So we discussed some really great helpful testimony on background about the various things that 481 is doing relating to stormwater management. I'll get right to the fiscal impact of the bill since we've gotten some really helpful background. Basically, you can think of the fiscal impacts of this bill as falling into 4 buckets. The first relates to the municipal fee impact assessment for municipalities that have the legal authorization to own and operate, that have full legal authority over their stormwater systems. So that relates to the permitting piece of this bill. There's also the clean water surcharge, which was previously discussed. And those are the 2 kind of revenue pieces of the fiscal impact here, those first 2 bullet points that you see on the fiscal impact of the note. The subsequent 2, which were discussed by Michael O'Grady with Legislative Counsel, really pertain to appropriations and providing legislative directives to the Clean Water Board, as well as ANR to provide appropriations for various purposes. So that being said, I'll dive into the kind of revenue implicated pieces of this fiscal note first, and happy to provide more detail on the appropriations pieces as needed after.
Thank you.
So section 1 of the bill, as you've heard, already does 2 things. 1, it extends the deadline by which owners of properties that are subject to the 3 acre permit have to achieve compliance. So impervious surfaces in the Lake Champlain or Lake Memphremagog watersheds, or within the watershed of any stormwater impaired water, are currently subject to an October 1st, 2023 deadline. That's being extended to October 1st, 2028. All other owners of impervious surfaces would be subject now to a October 1st, 2038 deadline, as opposed to October 1st, 2033. JFO has been in contact with DEC about this provision, and there's very little significant fiscal impact anticipated from the agency pertaining to the extension of these deadlines. Essentially, the fees that might come in from permit application fees or subsequent operating revenues from these fees. The agency anticipates they'll come in sooner rather than later, or at some point in time. The exact chronology of when those fees come in, it won't really change. The chronology of when those fees will be received might change, but the agency expects to be in receipt of those one way or another. So no significant impact to agency revenue from that. The second piece of permitting, the 3-acre permitting that's changing, is that this bill would allow municipalities that assume full legal responsibility for a stormwater system to assess municipal impact fees on users of that stormwater system. Now, that could be really meaningful in terms of the revenue raised at the municipal level. Joint Fiscal Office can't estimate that provision's impact on municipalities. We can speak to impacts on state revenues. So to that end, we were in contact with the agency on this point as well to see how this provision might affect future inflows of revenues to the state from these two groups of permit that are implicated here. The first is MS4, Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Permits, as well as Municipal Road General Permits. And these are just two really big, important, broad categories of stormwater permits that are held by municipalities and under which municipalities pay the state both one-time permit application fees, which are generally repaid every 5 years, as well as annual operating revenues. So we were talking with the agency about specifically how the annual operating revenues paid to the state under these permits might be affected by municipalities taking full legal authority over these stormwater systems. The short top line answer is it is very difficult to put a top line dollar number on the potential revenue impact to the state here. The magnitude of a potential impact would really depend on how many municipalities choose to assume this legal authority, right? So this bill would allow them to assume that legal authority or allow them to collect fees. It's unknown how many municipalities might choose to go down this road in the future. And so that doesn't really allow us to put together a dollar estimate, but we can talk through kind of what the possible effect might be. So if more municipalities were to assume full legal responsibility for these systems, that would remove a category of privately owned impervious surface on which the state can assess operating revenue fees on an annual basis. So under the MS4 permit, that fee is assessed at a $10 per acre basis on private and municipal impervious surfaces. And under the municipal road general permits, that annual operating fee can range anywhere from $0 to $1,800 per year, depending on the characteristics of that permittee. So while we can't put kind of a top line dollar number on that, I thought I would just put the scope of those fees in the overall context of the fund that they flow into. So these two permit fees end up in the Environmental Permit Special Fund, which funds broad agency regulatory work across a variety of environmental mediums. So in fiscal year 2023, MS4 operating permit revenues composed about 0.7% of the revenues paid into the Environmental Permit Fund that year. And this municipal road general permit operating fee composed around 1% of revenues flowing into the environmental permit fee in fiscal year 23. So while there's a little bit of ambiguity around what the impact to state revenues might be, we expect there might be a slight decrease over time. The overall kind of scope in terms of how this could affect that special fund is on the smaller side, around less than 2%. Any questions from the committee on that piece first? I think that's kind of the most technical of these two revenue impacts. The second one is the extension, or rather the not the extension of the clean water surcharge, but the repeal of the sunset of the clean water surcharge, which you've already heard a lot about. Essentially, this would continue the status quo of the current funding situation for the Clean Water Fund as it pertains to the clean water surcharge. Any questions from the committee on that, or
When is the bond paid off?
bond under the clean water surcharge bond?
Housing bond?
So Chair, if it's all right with you,
Yeah.
is our local expert on.
Are you sitting?
Yeah.
Temporary net direct fiscal office, I just looked this up and it looks like the bond instrument goes through 2038.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Great. I'm not gonna even think about it then. Thank you. Okay.
Right around the corner.
Great. And I'll just add also that the agency, and Neil, who's in the room,
Sorry, 1 second.
I'll just add that the agency and Neil, who's in the room, is very helpful in helping GFO put together this information. So happy to.
Thank you. That's fantastic. Thanks. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for joining us. Representative Nelson, you're here for a different bill, right?
484.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
In case of the,
Great, thank you. Appreciate it. We won't drag you up unless we do. Anyone need anything else on this bill? Okay,
I'm sure I would move that we find 481 favorable.
thank you. Representative Kimball moves that we find H81 favorable as it came to us. Any discussion? No seconds. We don't need seconds. Any discussion? Okay. If seeing none, if the clerk can please call the roll.
Senator Brannigan, yes. I will vote yes. As Representative Burkhart, Representative Feltus,
Yes.
Representative Higley,
Yes.
Representative Holcomb. Yes. Representative Kimball,
Yes.
Representative Maslin,
Yep.
Representative Odie. Yes. Representative Wazazak,
Yes.
Representative Canfield,
Yes.
Representative Kornheiser.
Yes.
We have voted the bill favorable, 11-0-0.
Thank you. Representative Odie is going to report it. Thank you. Everyone on that bill. Let us move on to Ted, you're on the next bill with us.
yeah, it's all J's.
Oh, sorry.
It's not.
Okay. I crossed them out for you got for the other one, but not for this one. Okay, great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, we are moving on to H319. Michael, welcome back.
So this is council again. What I'd like to show you first is the bill is introduced, so that is why I believe the bill is here.
Ah, delightful.
And that is in regard to the Paint Extended Producer Responsibility Program. Does everyone know of that program?
No.
And so there is a requirement in law that provides the manufacturers of paint establish a program for the free collection of waste paint. And it's called architectural paint, and under the program. And one of the things that the program allows is for the stewardship organization that runs the collection program to develop an assessment on the price of paint that consumers pay when they buy paint, and that assessment is then paid to the stewardship organization to run the collection program. Now, again, the stewardship organization comes up with the assessment, A&R approves, but there's a little bit of back and forth. What A&R proposed is to take away that authority of the stewardship organization to set the assessment or propose the assessment, and instead A&R wanted to set the fees for the assessment in statute.
I'm gonna ask you to pause for one brief moment. Representative Odie, can you please forward the email from Sorsha so the bill can get referred while people are still on the floor? Thank you. Back to you.
So here you see, I'm not sharing. Here you see what was proposed by the Agency of Natural Resources in this bill, which is a miscellaneous environmental conservation subjects bill. And they would have taken away the authority of the Paint Care Stewardship Organization to set the assessment and instead would have set the assessment based on statute. Half pint or smaller would have been no fee, greater than a half pint to 1 gallon would have been 65.
None of this is in the bill anymore.
None of it's in the bill.
Show us all the details. Okay. There's a bunch
None of it's
stuff
in the
that's not
bill.
in the bill. Great. Okay, thank you.
Totally pulled out, but you know the clerk, that if a committee report fails on the floor, she would bring the bills introduced up for a vote, and therefore you would need to have an answer as to the bills as introduced.
If that happens, everyone, we will take a recess and we can discuss the paint at that moment. Sound good? Okay.
So other than that, I don't know of a fiscal impact in this bill.
Wait, no. So there is a section that we should be reviewing. Well, we need to vote the whole thing. So can you just take us
Sure.
through one sentence per section, please, sir?
The first section, changes when the stewardship organization for the battery program reports to you on how to deal with complex batteries like EV batteries, storage batteries, etc. Second section, fuel storage tanks, changes the standard for when fuel delivery should not deliver to an underground storage tank, which is basically all your gasoline tanks, except for your farm tanks and underground storage tanks that are used for home residential, which you probably shouldn't have anymore, but some people do. Section 3 makes multiple changes to the extended producer responsibility program for covered household hazardous products. This is one of the first of its kind programs in the nation, and it was just enacted in the last biennium, and trying to figure out how to get it implemented is taking some time. All of these changes basically give the stewardship organization time, push back some requirements for the plan, when the plan's initiated, when reporting occurs, et cetera. They don't know what they don't know yet, because this is kind of a first program in the country, and so they're trying to collect as much information in order to implement this program. And that's what section 3 and 4 do. And then section 3, 4, and 5. 6 is also related to that, and so is 7. One of the things that 7 does, that if the stewardship organization can't come up with a plan for the covered household hazardous products, this language would give the agency the ability to adopt their own plan and then assess the manufacturers, the cost of the plan plus 10% of the plan's total cost. So it's a cost recovery, but it's also something of a penalty for them not adopting the plan on their own. Section 8 is the landfill disposal requirement, pushing back the disposal ban for covered household hazardous products by a year. Section 9 relates to giving A&R authority to waive the household hazardous waste collection events. All your solid waste management entities have to have at least 2 events a year and or a permanent collection site. It is expensive to run these programs, and this gives A&R some flexibility to allow municipalities to work together. One municipality to use an event or a site at another facility in another municipality to meet the requirements. And this is all in preparation of the stewardship organization implementing its plan and taking over those responsibilities. There's a little flexibility prior to the implementation of the collection plan. Section 10 is the Healthy Home Initiative. You may or may not know this. There was ARPA money that was available to the state for funding for drinking water, wastewater, stormwater systems for low to moderate income people or people who lived in manufactured housing. One of the conditions of the loan was you were supposed to keep that information confidential about who received the loans and any assistance. Underneath Vermont's Public Records Act, there isn't a specific exception that would have allowed that. So this is to clarify that those persons that received assistance, their information is not going to be shared underneath the public records. It is going to be confidential, and that is going to apply retroactively. And then section 11 relates to flood safety. Well, you may remember last year you enacted a bill that regulated flood hazard areas, riparian corridors, wetlands, dams, et cetera, flood safety. All of the dates in that bill are moved back a year, or proposed to be moved back 6 months to a year.
Yep,
Because that
that was necessary.
was necessary. The agency actually asked for that last year and you didn't give it to them. Now they're like, we definitely need another year. And that's really oh no, forgot. Last minute change was in the Climate Superfund Act last year. You directed the Agency of Natural Resources to adopt the resilience implementation strategy by rule. Well, the agency had already been working on it and they are going to be done with it by September. And they'd rather not go to rulemaking because it's expensive. And you already told them to engage in a vigorous public participation process. So they just asked if they could just report it to you in September instead of going through 8 to 10 months of rulemaking. And that's what you allowed them to do in section 19. And section 20 is a conforming amendment that was a part of the Climate Superfund Act that told them when they had to adopt the rules by, but if they're not adopting it by rules, you don't need to tell them as much. And section 21 is effective date, that takes effect on passage.
Thank you very much.
So James says there's a revenue impact.
We will have James come sit in the chair for a moment and then we will do some discussion, some voting, and then you'll come back into the chair and talk about the third bill of the afternoon. I'm glad that we have Thursday has arranged our schedule so delightfully.
So there's really only one section identified in the fiscal note.
Identify yourself for the record.
For the record, James Duffy, Joint Fiscal Office. There's really only one section that JFO had flagged as having potential fiscal impact to the state. That is section 7. Section 7 allows the Agency of Natural Resources kind of a contingency plan if manufacturers of certain hazardous products do not comply with the requirement to submit a collection plan to the state by the deadline specified in the bill. ANR has the ability to implement its own program and recover costs from that manufacturer, plus a 10% fee on top of the cost, which would be deposited into the Waste Management Assistance Special Fund. The agency, in speaking with JFO, DEC does not expect this contingency to be triggered. They expect that the financial penalty of the 10% fee would bring manufacturers into full compliance to the extent that they aren't already. So they are not anticipating additional revenues to flow into the special fund from this. If they did, the agency's rough estimate, this was a rough estimate, was somewhere between $500,000 and $750,000 annually. But again, that's kind of a hard one to scope precisely, absent better market data.
Thank you. So you said annually, wouldn't it be just once the time to set up a plan for it, ANR sets up a plan for it, and they pay the 10%, then it's over, it's set up, right?
I believe the plans are reauthorized or, resubmitted to the agency on a regular basis. If I'm speaking erroneously about the annual requirement, perhaps Michael can correct me.
It's the cost of administration, Representative Bodie, because they would be the ones running the plan and they would be collecting it, they would be managing it in this position. So effectively, I think, working backwards from James's point, I think they were saying it's going to cost them $5 million to run a program annually, and then 10%. What I call the VIG is going to be $500,000.
So it's 5 million that they charge them.
But they charge them, right, and then an extra 10%.
And that's every single year. They can't ever, don't they ever just say, okay, now we have the plan, now we'll do it ourselves?
Well, that's what this is all about. This is all about leveraging them to come to the table and propose their own plan. So if they keep getting hit with $500,000 fines every year, they're probably gonna decide some way to figure it out. Or they'll figure it and say, oh, that's cheaper than us doing it ourselves.
I prefer that, yeah.
Any questions for James? Okay, thank you very much.
Awesome.
Well,
On 319.
oh yes, Madam Chair, I would move that we find H319 favorable.
Any discussion? Yeah.
I just need a little clarity on the piece that's coming out, Michael, that talked about the paint recovery program. Where's that stand now?
That is, nothing within the pain recovery program will be changing. So the current assessment that is charged for paint and the model or mechanism for creating it would not.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
Used to see these programs come to fruition. Well, I mean, they've been around, been tried them for a couple of years. And they're working. All this, that, and that. It's nice to see them coming to fruition.
Seeing no further discussion, let's clerk please call the roll.
Representative Brannigan.
Yes.
I will vote yes, and Representative Burkhardt. Representative Feltes.
Yes.
Representative Higley.
Yes.
Representative Holcomb.
Yes.
Representative Kemble.
Yes.
Representative Maslin.
Yep.
Representative Odie.
Yes.
Representative Wazazak.
Yes.
Representative Canfield.
Yes.
Representative Kornheisel.
Yes.
We have voted the bill favorable, 11-0-0.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have
Just gonna report this one.
H484 is next. And Michael, do you want to join us again?
Just gonna
I
report
will
that.
just figure that out. Thank you very much.
Okay, yep.
Okay.
Hello, again, this is Mike McGrady with Legislative Council. 484 is an act relating to miscellaneous agricultural subjects. Annually, the Agency of Ag comes to the two ag committees and asks for miscellaneous bill in each house. And they usually ask for multiple subjects to be addressed in each bill. This year, they asked for one subject to be addressed in the House and one subject to be addressed in the Senate. So it's a miscellaneous bill, but it really only addresses one core subject matter in this bill.
Did they do that just so your life would be more fun?
Pardon
Did
me?
they do that just so your life would be improved or?
No, they don't think about my. Traditionally, the Agency of Agriculture has regulated fertilizer and liming products in the state for multiple reasons. It's a consumer protection authority to make sure that what is being sold is not harmful or deleterious, that what you're buying is actually what it's advertised as, that you're buying the correct weight of products that you are buying, et cetera. And so that has been a program for years, and each product that is sold in the state pays a fee per product, $85 a year for fertilizer products and $50 a year for liming products. Over the past, I would say 10 years, there have been additional products that have been entering the market that aren't fertilizer or aren't lime or are making claims about what they do and their beneficial contribution to plant growth or soil health, et cetera. And you, the General Assembly, has been regulating them and adding them to the Agency of Agriculture's authority to regulate those products like fertilizer or lime. But you've been doing it kind of on a case-by-case basis as these products came to the market and were determined to be something different from fertilizer. And they include things like plant amendments, soil amendments, plant biostimulants. And this is a situation that all states were facing. So as you probably know, state agencies all have these organizations where they all work together and they have crazy acronyms. And the acronym here is the American Association of Plant Food Control Operators. APCO. So APCO held a meeting last year to develop a uniform bill on how to regulate these substances, these products that are not necessarily new, but been coming onto the market over the 10, 15 years. And they proposed a bill called the Uniform Beneficial Substances Act. And so what this bill is doing is conforming Vermont's regulatory authority over fertilizer, lime, plant amendments, soil amendments, plant biostimulants to conform it to the Uniform Beneficial Substances Act. The biggest change in the bill is changing reference to the terms plant amendment, soil amendment, and plant biostimulant, and replacing it with beneficial substances about 40 to 50 times, if not more.
I'm gonna ask you to pause for 1 second. Thank you. Representative Bodie, can you report that last bill? Representative Maslin, can you report this bill whenever we get to it? And the bells are about to start ringing for a roll call
Sure, that'd be fine.
on,
Happy to do it.
Yeah.
no. 342, which is protecting personal information. That's a bill from the Commerce Committee. That's all I know about it.
So, but
Back to you.
one of the things substantively that the bill is doing to conform with the Uniform Beneficial Substances Act is to add as part of the state's umbrella two of these substances that the state had not been regulating: soil inoculants and plant inoculants are now defined as beneficial substances underneath the Agency of Agriculture's regulatory authority. And they will need to pay the $85 a year registration fee for each of those products. How to determine what that revenue impact is, I don't know. That's why James is James. And so,
Yes, that's why we all have our own.
and so that's really what this bill does. Conforms the regulation of these products that aren't fertilizer or liming, but do have beneficial effects for plants or soil, and to ensure that they are meeting your consumer protection needs. They're not adulterated, they're not deleterious, they're properly labeled. And the agency would implement its authority as it has for fertilizer, liming products for decades.
Thank you. Any further questions? Great, thank you. James, let's see if we can get this all done before the roll call. Yes.
Just a comment. Appreciate you using the word inoculant. We have a constituent who wants to inoculate trees, pieces of trees that have been taken down for basically to get them out of the way, you know, with inoculate with little buttons or beads of things that can then grow beneficial edible mushrooms.
Yes.
So I find this, the use of the terminology interesting, you know,
Thank you.
well, I just thought I might point it out before I forget.
For the record, James Duffy. Essentially, the vast majority of products that will be registered under this new definition, beneficial substances, are already registered under the Agency of Agriculture and Food and Markets registration system. They identified perhaps a handful of products nationwide that might newly be required to be registered, but in total, they expect the fiscal impact from that to be less than $1,000, which in the scope of the agency's overall budget would be de minimis. Just for comparison, they received about 4,500 product registrations in fiscal year 25, about $386,000 in revenue associated with that. And they expect the overall change for this to be less than $1,000 in the scope of around $385,000.
Thank you. I think this might be the first use of the word de minimis since the session started. So you get a special Ways and Means prize.
Save it for the end of the day.
Any of those stars from all?
Any questions? Wonderful, thank you.
Madam Chair, I would move to find 484 favorable.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, Representative Burkhardt.
Representative Brannigan.
Yes.
I will vote yes. And Representative Burkhardt, Representative Feltes,
Yes.
Representative Higley,
Yes.
Representative Holcomb.
Yes.
Representative Kimball,
Yes.
Representative Maslin, Representative Odie, Representative Wazazak,
Oh, yes.
Representative Canfield,
Yes.
Representative Kornheiser.
Yes.
You voted the bill favorable, 11-0-0.
Thank you very much. Representative Maslin is going to report that. So Representative Odie, if you could make sure, Representative Odie, if you could make sure you sent your email. So you have two. Thank you. Representative Maslin, please send your email before you stand up. We are done for the day, team. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow morning at 9. We are starting with the